is going to be featuring two quite prominent urban planners, both from Illinois, who have extensive practical and research experience in planning for and housing the elderly population. Jacques Gourguechon will address what it means to grow old, the issues of stereotyping and ageism, finding purpose and meaning in life as we age, and the special needs of the elderly for housing, living arrangements, public safety, education, and mobility. Professor Heumann will be focusing on the role of urban planning in providing sufficient care for senior adults and implications for the service demographics, standards of living, and care providers. He will be discussing a range of specialized neighborhood and housing models that have been developed to accommodate the senior population, including community development corporations, different forms of home help, and the Neighborhood Warden model, which can help to monitor and care for seniors in the community. Both speakers will address the important role that planners have to play in this significant societal change. And I'd like to tell you a little bit now about the speakers. Jacques Gourguechon, AICP, is a founding principal and serves as president of Camiros Limited, a planning consulting firm in Chicago, Illinois. He has a bachelor's from Michigan State University in economics and a master's in city and regional planning from the Illinois Institute of Technology. Recently, he's been focused on human investment planning, which considers the human side of the city equation. He has completed human investment plans for Pueblo, Colorado, and Kansas City, Missouri. His interest in planning issues for our aging population sprung from his involvement in human investment planning. Jacques has long been active in APA activities. He was formerly president of the Illinois chapter and currently serves on the National APA Legislative and Policy Committee. He's a regular speaker at section, state, and national planning conferences. Jacques is a senior fellow at the Chaddock Institute for Metropolitan Development at DePaul University. In this role, he offers training sessions to community planning officials and workshops for working planners and DePaul University students. He's also an adjunct assistant professor, College of Architecture at Illinois Institute of Technology. Len Heumann is a professor emeritus of urban and regional planning and psychology at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He holds a PhD in city planning from the University of Pennsylvania and a master's in urban planning and bachelor's of architecture, both from the University of California at Berkeley. He's the co-author or co-editor of a number of important books that pertain to the topic, including Empowering Frail Elderly People, Opportunities and Impediments in Housing, Health, and Support Service Delivery, Housing for the Elderly, Planning and Policy Formulation in Western Europe and North America, Aging in Place with Dignity, International Solutions Related to Low-Income and Frail Elderly People, Managing Care, Risk, and Responsibility, the Challenge of the 21st Century as the Aging and Disabled Population Grows and Diversifies, and the 1988-1999 National Surveys of Section 202 Housing for the Elderly and Handicapped. I do have some introductory remarks that I'd like to kick us off today with, and I do have a personal story. This is me here at work at the City of Urbana in our conference room, busy at work as a city planner, and as a community development director, I work in planning as well as our grants programs and building safety and just a full range of gamut. And I do have a personal experience. I myself am a young boomer in good health, thank goodness, but I'm part of what has been known as a sandwich generation, where I have taken care of my children at the same time as I've taken care of the older generation. This is my mother, Natalie Tyler, and she lived from 1928 to 2008, and this was taken just a few months before she passed away. And my mother, Natalie, had a stroke, a major stroke in 2001, and as you can see, she was in a wheelchair, and she had a very high need, and I was, for those 7 years, her care provider. And she also had limited resources, so I found that I was in the unique position of becoming a service consumer as well as a service provider. And I began to see my job as a planner and my role at the city through a whole different lens as I worked to assist my mother with her needs through those years. So for example, planners and caretakers as well would become interested in senior services, and we certainly took advantage of those in Urbana. Housing choices became important, affordable housing choices for people with these needs, for elderly people with these needs. Walkability, we had a wheelchair, and that really took a whole new way to look at the city and to get around. Accessibility to transit. Our local transit district has ADA rides on demand, and this allowed my mother to retain an independent lifestyle even with the high needs. The quality of medical services, the safety, fire and police and emergency response, and the things to do in the community, cultural and recreational offerings, just seen through a whole new lens in that role. And at the job, at the office, I also began to see my regular tasks in a different light as well. And I think these are some things that planners can do and ways that planners can help in doing site plan reviews to really check those sidewalk connections and to make sure that there's transit access, and reviewing subdivisions to ensure that those road connections can be there both now and in the future, and to resist the request for reductions of sidewalk connectivity, even things like street lighting, to think again about what the demands are for people with failing eyesight. On zoning, here there were challenges as well. Look at the zoning ordinance to ensure that there's no discriminatory language. We in our ordinance had daycare centers for children, but we did not provide for adult daycare centers, and I felt very strongly that we needed to provide at least that same level of permissions for adult daycare. Mixed use can be very important with reduced mobility, that you can have both housing and commercial services within a small spatial area. I did mention that I work as well in building safety and complying with ADA requirements, diligently connecting that access. In our community, we have a visitability requirement for housing units where there's any kind of city assistance, requiring that there be zero-step entrances and adaptability of the unit and visitability for people with mobility needs. Also on the programming end, I saw our programs in a new light. We do have senior grants that we provide to seniors in the community to say fix a furnace in an emergency, something of that nature. We have access grants, and these allow for remodeling a home to provide for disabled access. We provide whole house rehabilitation. Many times this will be for elderly people seeking to stay in their home and be able to make those modifications. Another service we provide, which I saw in a whole new light, was our neighborhood cleanup. And all of these are used with our CDBG or block grant funds. And in our biannual neighborhood cleanups, we do pick up for seniors. And I think that's very important in keeping the house safe and clear of excess materials and furnishings. And finally, each year we do have social service grants at the city. And once again, we look to have priorities and hope to always have provisions for the elderly as part of those priorities. And this is just an example of a visitable structure. You can see there's no steps, and there's a way to design and to require structures of this sort. And here's some examples of those small access grants that we provide in the city, and it helps people stay in their homes and to be safe. And then here's our neighborhood cleanup, just showing twice a year. It's amazing what we see each time. So I think with our two speakers today, we are really going to learn more and more and get connected. And Jacques is going to be able to help us first to understand what it is to plan for the elderly and the aging. And then Len is going to tell us how to proceed. So at this point, I am going to turn this over to Jacques Gourguechon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We are now going to be hearing from Jacques, and I will be taking over the presentation, so just give me a second to do that. Okay, Jacques, I think we're ready.
I'm on. Okay, thank you, and thank everybody for attending. This is a fascinating topic for me, and I hope you'll find it interesting as well. As Libby said, I got interested in this by actually doing human investment planning for a number of cities, which in and of itself is an interesting topic, but we're going to concentrate on the elderly. I guess one of my qualifications for talking to you about this is that I fall into the age group, and so I'm learning how I'm supposed to be planning for myself as we tackle this problem. But okay, Jennifer and I have to coordinate, and we apologize for that, but I have to tell her when to change the slides, and she will do that, so let's go to the second one. Well, the question is, what does it mean to be old? The elderly are now easily can live 20 to 30 years past the magic age of 65. 65 got put in place some years ago. I'm not quite sure how, but certainly with the longevity and advances in healthcare, people live a very long time past the age of 65, much more so than our parents or grandparents did. And in fact, the elderly are now considered actually to have two phases of it, the young, old, and the oldest of the old. And they really are very two different parts of life. But when we consider planning for an aging population, we have to consider this 20 to 30 year phase of life, a wide range of physical and mental conditions which definitely change. Society unfortunately has stereotyping about elderly people and discrimination against them. I'm sorry to say. Housing and living arrangements, Leonard's going to talk about at length some of the specialties areas, but the housing needs and living arrangements I'll allude to as well. Mobility and
Jacques,
living in place are...
Jacques, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. So your audio quality is a little bit inconsistent. It sounds like maybe the microphone is a little bit too close to you. So I'm getting a little bit of a scratching noise.
Okay, is that better?
Yes. Thank you.
I've done it. Sorry, everybody. I've been very concerned about the idea of socialization or isolation, of how people, when they're in their elder years, are in different kinds of family arrangements and can easily get isolated, and the need for socialization among their family, friends, and with the community and with community support is very important. So those are the kinds of things that I see as important for planners to consider in an aging population. So next slide. So why don't we act our age then? Some of my favorites. This is looking at, the stereotyping of people who are old. I saw B.B. King in Muskegon, Michigan a couple of years ago. He's now 83 and still touring 100 days a year. And I understand that Betty White, who is 88, just started a new sitcom. Can you believe that Ringo Starr is going to be 70 years old, as well as Dylan and Paul Simon? These are all people that were young just a couple of weeks ago, it seemed to me. How about these young people? I think my favorite is Raquel Welch. She is 70 years old. Can you believe that? That really speaks to the power of cosmetic surgery, I guess. And of course, my favorite singer, Aretha Franklin, is going to be 70 as well as Joe Biden. So there's all kinds of people that are very active and vital people in this world who, fall into this notion of being elder Americans. Yet time marches on. The current life expectancy is 78. Medical advances, and if we take care of ourselves, that's supposed to go up to 81 for men and 84 for women. Women always live longer and will continue to do so. But there's nobody who's over 65 that can do all the things they did at 24 or 42. And we also have to face the fact that half the people over 65 have some kind of chronic health condition. And a lot of people over 65 have some sort of functional limitation, something they can't do for which makes daily living difficult and they need help for. Now, again, the over 65 thing has to be considered in light of that many people from 65 to 75 or even older are very active and very healthy, and a lot of the problems occur as people get beyond 75. So that's all this idea of a single group of people that are over 65 is really faulty. Now, who's this? Well, let me introduce you to Olive Emily Jones. She's my new granddaughter. She's a month old today, and her life expectancy is 100 years. And some people say it might be 110 years. So the idea of how we plan for a society which is going to have people living that long is really a continuing dynamic that we're all going to have to deal with. So goodbye, Olive. So who are the elder Americans? Let's see who they are. There's a study that was done by the Federal Interagency Forum on Aging. It was about 6 or 7 federal departments, did a wonderful job, and you can all look it up under that name, Federal Interagency Forum. And the things that I looked at were population, economic health status, healthcare, risk behaviors. They cover a lot of areas, but it's a great single place to get a lot of believable data on what is going on in the elderly population. So it's one of the fastest growing cohorts of the population, if not the fastest. There's 13% of Americans are now over 65. In 20 years, that'll grow to 20%. Of course, it's very uneven. There's a suburban Georgia county that only has 3% of their people that are over 65, and many places in the Midwest have older populations, much older than the rest of the country. Look at the lower statistics. 21% of people over 65 have college degrees. It's a huge difference from, again, our parents' and grandparents' generation, that you have an educated group of people who have a lot to contribute. America is relatively young. In Japan, the current elderly population accounts for 22%, and by 2015 it's projected to be fully a third of their society will be over 65. And that will cause, Europe has also got an older population. Some people have projected Italy will be as old as Japan by the year 2050. That America will stay relatively young in terms of developed countries around the world. In terms of economics, older Americans have become wealthier. I think that there's some stereotype that older people are poverty-stricken, and that's really not the case. The net worth of at least white households that are over 65 averages around $280,000. A lot of that is in real estate, and the big real estate run-ups during the 90s and the decade of 2000s created a lot of wealth for people. I think what we really have to be cognizant of is the huge inequities that remain, that the white household average net worth is 6 times the average black and Hispanic households. And while low income and below poverty in the elderly group have dropped significantly, it's still a 36% of those households. But there's money in the elderly population, and that money often can be used to provide services that they need. Living arrangements are different from when you're young, although the idea of a family is changing very quickly all across the demographic landscape. But if you look at the 2 areas that I've highlighted and look at the marital status of men, which is much, much higher than women, partly that they stay married until they die, and when they die, the women are widows. But the difference in percentages are very high, and it puts women at a distinct disadvantage, and or maybe not, maybe they don't want to live with men, I don't know. But in terms of living alone, it's almost double. 40% of women and less than 20% of men live alone. And to the degree that alone means lonely, that's a tough situation. It doesn't always mean that, of course, but it's something that as planners we need to be cognizant of. Health status, this is, old people are tough, and I think this is great. These are self-reports. People are asking, how's your health? And as you can see there, 77% of people in the white race say that their health is good to excellent. Once they're over 85, it's still 68%. It's somewhat lower for black and Hispanic populations, but they have less access to health care. But basically people are aches and pains and arthritis and whatever else is going on report that their health is good to excellent, and they want to be full participants in the society that we live in. On the other side of the coin, this is a very sensitive one for me because I fall into the area of someone having hearing impairment. That 42% of men and 30% of women can't hear well, and it is the most prominent disability in the United States, being hearing impaired. Vision is somewhat less, but people don't see as well as when they're older either, and these have big ramifications on the way we arrange our environments for them. You know, I think I mentioned early on that half of the people had some type of chronic health condition, but people are living longer, and longevity is expected to go up. But we're not as good as some other countries, and many of the European countries and Scandinavian countries have much greater longevity, or somewhat greater. But people have arthritis in a high degree, 40% of men and 55% of women. That's a huge amount. You don't move as fast when you have arthritis. These have issues of mobility and safety, all relate to these kinds of issues. Cancer, heart disease, and perhaps most important, again, a problem that is occurring across all the age cohorts is obesity, and obesity is an important problem that affects the elderly as well as younger people. I think this startled me as much as anything, but if you look at the degree of mental health issues, particularly anxiety, that 58% of women and 53% of men are suffering from anxiety. That's a terrible number, and it seems to me that there ought to be ways that we can arrange our environment in a way that at least help people worry less. They worry about a lot of different things, which we'll see in a minute. But when over half of elderly people are suffering from anxiety, and then another 10 and 18% respectively are suffering from depression, these are serious things that have to be looked into. We all know that drug costs have gone through the roof. For the average person over 65 in 2006, it was over $15,000. I hate to guess what it is now. But we're a pill society, and these are issues that the elderly have to deal with. Functional limitations, this was also early on, we noticed that some 42% have some kind of functional limitation. Now, there's two different types. The more serious are activities of daily living. We have to get dressed, eat, walk, use a toilet, and so on. And the IAEDs are using the phone, preparing your own meals, shopping, managing money, and doing that kind of thing. And actually people who are on Medicare who are over 65, there's a relatively small percentage are struck by this. When you really have difficulty with the ADLs, you end up in special housing for that and confined to a facility, but thank God that's not a huge percentage of people. the percent has been declining. These percentages of people that are not able to do this have been declining for both men and women, and that's good news. The bad news is we're not fit. We mentioned obesity, but some basic measures of physical activity that a huge percent of women were not able to do these some basic thing, bending over or doing, I don't know what they are actually, but a set of simple physical exercise, and this is going to have a big impact, or already has a big impact on our health. If you look at the rates of obesity, 40% of men over 65, 35% of women. If you look at that, that's on the rise. It really begins to go up in 1988, and it goes up for both people that are 65 to 74 and over 75, going up for both men and women, and is an important health concern. So is it our job to think about these things? Well, this is a question I've been asking myself as I got into the human investment planning angle, and I answered that by saying, well, if our job as planners is to deal with the quality of life, then this is a big part of the quality of life, that we not only have to look at how we organize subdivisions, how we organize our neighborhoods, where we put the pipes in the ground and all of that kind of stuff, but also the quality of life that people are living in different stages of their life. And that's Jim Rouse over there. I think he felt the same way, but he knew that cities were fun. So the planning objectives for elderly, as I see them, are protect their well-being, to do things that can support well-being, to make sure they have housing, that their ability to age in place. And this is, if there was ever a goal that there was a uniform agreement on it, it's that elderly people want to age in place. If you remember anything else about this, that's what they want. They need mobility in order to keep independence and to be active. They need socialization opportunities, and there are public safety concerns. Well, well-being. Elderly worry about being able to take care of themselves, being independent. And they also worry about losing their memory, and that certainly is understandable. They want to have meaningful things to do. They want to be able to have a lot of friends, or have good friends and have access to them. They need facilities that are designed for their needs, their use, their functional limitations, and so on. Diet and nutrition support. Exercise is crucial to both mental and physical health and longevity, and we want to be able to facilitate the engagement of older residents, not only to help them, but to get them to help us, and got a two-way street here. So all of these things have to do with well-being, and as Libby gave our introduction, that there are all kinds of ways within cities and in governments that can support these types of things. This lady is 90 years old. Can you believe that? And she isn't planning that sign. She's doing the splits along that sign, and it's so flexible. It's unbelievable. But exercise and nutrition are crucial. Where and what kinds of facilities are really suitable for the elderly in your community? Housing. We're going to have 48 to 60 million households in the elderly category. That's a lot of different kinds of housing. There's a range of housing needs. Again, 90% of people want to age in place. That means they want to stay in their own house. There's all types of supportive housing, from senior independent living to senior communities to assisted living. And I think that various types of housing and the various economic arrangements and financing for that housing are going to be something that planners will be dealing with increasingly, and Leonard's going to talk more about that in the second part of this presentation. Well, the vast majority want to stay in their homes, and the threats to that are safety issues, chronic health problems that the elderly may have, cognition issues, memory problems, and so on. And they're staying in their home alone, you got the possible problem of isolation and resulting depression. So one of the things we want to look at is how to reduce or neutralize some of these threats. One of the interesting things that I came across is that there's a whole new category of people called certified age-in-place specialists. And there are a few towns that have made arrangements with companies that offer these services because it is actually much more efficient to keep people in their own homes than it is to have special housing, and for the most part. And that's what people want to do. So this is maybe a new thing that's coming along. The idea of technology providing monitoring ability for people that might be living along to protect them against falls or other types of things when they are living alone and don't have somebody to call upon, also increases the ability to age in place. Well, people have to get around, and unfortunately, that people who are over 65 or over 60 actually suffer fatalities from traffic accidents at double the rate of people that are under 60. Now, part of that is because they're frail and don't survive bad accidents, but also mostly it's they're not mobile enough, they're not agile enough to avoid a lot of these things. And so this is something that planners really need to pay attention to. And the arterial roads are particularly dangerous. They're wider, traffic's moving faster, they need to have time to get across. And a lot of the kinds of things that we all have been paying attention to over the last few years, complete streets and so on, these types of policies are good for the elderly. Well, this is an area that's close to my heart, that old people drive. And in fact, in 20 years, 25% of the drivers on the highway will be over 65. We need to make sure that the driving environment is responsive to people that are over 65, to the fact that they do have sensory limitations. Maybe they need larger road signs, wider lanes. It kind of runs right up against the notion of road diets, which helps elderly in a different direction. But very often people outlive their ability to drive. In fact, every year 600,000 have their driver's license taken away from them. If they have to stop driving, they need alternative means to get around. And if they don't have that, it's one of the biggest reasons that people go into isolation and get depressed. There's a program, it's a program for everything in this country, but one called Supplemental Transportation Program, and there's an exchange of ideas. Most of these are non-governmental, but they're community related to provide alternative modes of mobility to people that lose their ability to drive, and many of us are going to be faced with that. So you just try to take my driver's license away, and we'll see how far you get with that. And the ability to, or the desire to be able to move, I mean, I think is depicted in these little carts that are now running around that people that can't drive will get in these carts. And I saw one of these on a 4-lane federal highway just a couple of days ago with big semi-tractor trailers passing by and lots of traffic, and it's just amazing. So mobility and land use. So smart growth principles work really well for the elderly, just as they do for kids. And they allow us to have transit options. We have compact communities. We're going to be able to support transit. Pedestrian access through mixed-use strategies. Again, there's a lot of this that Libby talked about, but it's all true that the new notions about how to arrange our cities and arrange our living areas are particularly important for the elderly population. Now, in New York State, they've begun to pick up on the idea of safe streets for kids or safe streets to get to school, to look at safe streets for seniors to get to places where seniors go, or just to create crossings on arterials and places that are dangerous, and a whole set of standards are available to make it possible for the elderly to be safer in crossing streets. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because we have a time limit, but they're they're very logical engineering and design mechanisms that all of us can look up. And a lot of the problem comes on right turns. Elderly people step into the crosswalk. A driver makes a right turn right into them. They can't see them, and so there are ways of timing streetlights and so on to reduce that effect. Here's some of the time signals are 3 feet per second. Give people time to get across that intersection. Make sure the markings are highly visible, that you have advanced stop bars. Stop those cars well behind the pedestrian crossings. Repair people. Old people tend to trip and fall, and when they fall, they break bones. And these keeping our curbs and our ramps in good repair is critical. So what about the socialization in your community? Most communities have senior centers. Well, does it have the facilities inside that meets the needs of the elderly? What kind of programs does it have? Do we know this? I mean, planners can find out about these things. How can these be improved? In many ways, we're messengers, and we can find out what certain components of our population need and take those back to the community at large. So get to know your senior citizens in your community. Find out what their issues are and what their problems are. Is there a CAP program available? Are there alternative and demand responsive transportation facilities available? All these things are things that planners can take upon themselves to improve the lives and the quality of lives of their senior residents. So the key concepts that I'd like to leave you with are the idea of aging in place, the need for mobility, to think about dignity and the ability of people in their elderly years to live with dignity and independence, to support wellness, both physical and mental, to give them meaningful involvement, to make sure they have connections and social opportunities with families and friends. Thank you very much for listening, and remember, being old isn't so bad after all, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jacques. So at this point, we are going to turn it over to Lynn. So I'm just going to take a second to make that change. And while we're making that change, we did have one question that came up, Jacques. What is an IADL?
An IADL is an instrument of activities of daily living, like a telephone, a washing machine you wash your clothes in. And so it's a kind of a new term for me as well, and but the disabilities for elderly is usually run on ADLs, which are activities of daily living. So you qualify a assisted living center or assisted living housing if you have 4 ADLs, that is, you need help bathing, or you need help taking your medication, you need help dressing. There are generally 11 of these that have been identified. If you have any 4 of those 11, then you qualify as a disabled person and are protected by the fair housing laws of the country.
Okay.
But the IADLs are more normal things. Can you wash your clothes? Can you cook your meals? Can you use a stove? And it's really the instrument of activities of daily living is what it stands for.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn now.
Okay. Hello, everybody. The I actually stands for independent. Independent activities of daily living. It's a way of measuring how independent the person can be, and those are the kinds of tasks. I agree with everything that Jacques said. The whole idea of aging in place is very central to what I have to say, as well as the dignity of support services, how they come to people, and what kind of quality of life they leave people with. So, am I going to be in control of changing? Okay, do it. Okay. I have a number of things I'm going to be focusing on. There's such diversity in the senior population that as a planner, I want to first and foremost talk about the fact that baby boomers, as of last year, we're going to be increasing the population of seniors for the next 25 years. On the senior population, as you will see, and we just don't know how long it's going to take to get back into a positive economy again. Seniors at the bottom 1/3 in income are the ones I'm going to be looking at statistics on, and seniors with advancing frailties, and seniors from minority communities. And let me give you some summary goals right at the start here as well. Federal and state funds will be necessary for senior housing and community-based services, but the planning must be local to address population diversity, unique local economies, and unique local physical and social environments. And we'll talk more about that as we get going. Each community must assess need priorities with limited financial resources. So empowering seniors and their family to take charge of maintaining independence to the margin of their ability becomes extremely important. Aging in place with dignity will be the preferred goal both for the weakened economy and for the senior quality of life. Traditional and new planning tools. Zoning and building codes, as you heard from both speakers, need to become more flexible and focused at the same time. We need less residential sprawl so community-based services can reach the needy efficiently. Greater neighborhood density that supports local services within easy access. Infill, remodeling, and retrofitting streets, businesses, and residences to be universally barrier-free and maintenance efficient. Allowing eco-housing and co-housing and group living options to fit within our zoning is going to be extremely important. Since the family is the first line of support, we need to look at those demographics and see if there really is family members available. 30 million households care for an adult over the age of 50 today. That's going to double to 60 million in 25 years. So this is something we all have to get used to and live with. Most adults needing assisted living prefer extended family care. Fewer families among the poorest 1/3 can afford to care for a senior, and this has gotten worse with the current recession. Lower income families require both adults to work, leaving no one at home to provide care even when they live close by. If they live across town, it often limits family support to just weekends. Dwindling numbers of support is also extremely important. The pool of family support comes from adults aged 35 to 64. They are dwindling as the elderly are increasing. Projections for white populations from 1990 to 2050 show that in the most important group, 35 to 44, they're young and healthy enough to take care of grandma. That's going to decline 17%. The 45 to 64-year-olds who are also at the tail end of that getting kind of frail, that's going to increase by 31%. But the 65-plus population is going to increase by 92% for whites. For African American and Latino American populations, this is even worse. The age 35 to 64 increases slightly compared to the negative number for whites, but we are absolutely going to be swamped, families are, when it comes to the growing population over 65. African Americans 65 and up is going to increase 244%, and Latino Americans above age 65 is going to increase 1,085%. So community-based service demographics become the next most important, the next line of defense. The next most preferred and efficient source of support is these community-based home visits. There are three broad types: healthcare services, social services, including the ADL and IADL support, and neighborhood and housing care and repair, which is a little bit more rare in the United States, but is rapidly growing and has the closest ties with urban planning. Provision must be coordinated and seamless across all three to maximize financial efficiency and senior quality of life. Today, these three types of support are separated programs and funding streams with little or no coordination, creating support gaps, no client control of support resulting in senior loss of dignity, remaining independence, and quality of life. This is going to be a very big political issue because we have these fiefdoms in the federal government and as it streams down to the local government between health care, social welfare, and physical buildings and environment. And we got to find some way for them to be coordinated. Many low-income minority seniors are themselves care providers. One of the most startling statistics that we've been following over the last 3 censuses is a growing number of African American and Latino seniors cannot conceive of the term retirement or becoming empty nesters. And listen to this statistics. 53.5% of minority households with children under the age of 18 and grandparents present, there is no parents. They are absent. Part of this is due to the increasing use of drugs. Most often, it's grandma coping with her own aging and raising grandchildren. The recession is not over for the minority and the poor, and I can't say that more strongly. Too much of the statistics in the news these days saying, well, we've dropped below 10% unemployment and everything is now hunky-dory. In hard-hit areas, it is 18 to 20% for the majority. Minority unemployment in the hardest hit areas can reach 35%. It gets worse if you count households with no member actively looking for work or working reduced hours with no benefits. Those aren't included in the unemployment statistics. So needed programs including and starting with purpose-built housing. Seniors are the most diverse and dynamic age cohort, especially when we include their varied levels and range of functional independence. They will need all forms of assisted living, small board and care facilities, large senior apartment complexes, whole retirement communities, even more nursing care facilities. We have 3 major types of subsidized housing that can take on any one of the assisted living options. We have public housing built by local housing authorities and sometimes managed by those housing authorities, but for the most part these days that is outsourced to the private sector. Nonprofit owned and managed Section 202 housing, that's the oldest subsidized housing program for seniors going back to 1958 and one of the most reliable. Privately built for-profit developers who get tax shelters to make rents affordable. And all 3 can get additional subsidies for assisted living services, or they can build only for independent seniors. Needed programs and purpose-built housing. The combination of these 3 provider types gives a great deal of housing diversity. The problem is lack of funding. This will get more serious as the percent of frail seniors grow over the next 25 years. The newest funding for the last 2 years have only gone to unclog the pipeline of requests approved but never funded under the Bush administration. Backlogs predate the Bush administration. The very popular Section 202 program already had an 11-year waiting time to get into the average 202 facility when Bush came into office. No one, let alone a frail and low-income senior, can wait that long. Community-based home help is in greater demand than new affordable housing. 68% of seniors are homeowners, and the majority want to age in place in a home and a neighborhood they know and love. Losing their home is seen as a loss of status, identity, and perceived independence. And I mean perceived independence because sometimes their home can be an albatross. It can be so barrier-loaded that you actually lose independence. This means where there's no family, they will overwhelmingly prefer assistance with advancing frailty to be community-based visiting services that come into their homes. Type 1 of this type of home help is social welfare home living assessments. Social workers or neighborhood planners trained to assess living environments. One outcome is that it is in the best interest for the senior to move to a more affordable and supportive environment. That is, social workers and planners who come into the house see that they really shouldn't be remaining there. One reason is the home is too costly to maintain. Its mortgage, its utilities, its upkeep, and so on. Another is the property is so substandard it must be abandoned. And another one is that barriers to independent living are numerous and too costly to undertake renovations. And finally, the neighborhood itself can be so isolating and dangerous that the senior needs to leave. The second is the care and repair home type. Many older homes and neighborhoods can be modified, modernized, and made more supportive. The care and maintenance of senior residents and the care and maintenance of the housing environment can be linked and coordinated in ways that allow the senior to remain active and in charge of their housing to the margin of their interest and ability. They can attend neighborhood improvement meetings and be involved in oversight of their own home's maintenance. This takes special training managers who can evaluate both personal care and environmental care in ongoing and dynamic ways. In many places, this type of home help does not yet exist in this country. The third is minimum wage home help. These are the people who assist with ADLs, and we've mentioned what all those are, and in many places, this type of critical, affordable help is in short supply, if not unavailable, for the following reasons. Demand need has outstripped home help supply, and this can only get worse. We have lost providers due to withheld state funding, and this has really been a big problem in Illinois. We've had agencies that have had to close down because the state just didn't come up with the money. The minimum wage is just too low, causing high turnover, poor quality of help when we really need more caring and creative people. Added costs of travel time and gas prices have required eliminating services in widely dispersed seniors in low-density suburbs and rural areas. And some home help is reluctant to go into high crime risk center city areas. The fourth type is skilled professional home help. This group of home help includes nurses who monitor health conditions for seniors with chronic but manageable disabilities and oversee recovery of episodic injuries or illnesses. It also includes various types of therapists, such as speech and occupational therapy, or small and large motor exercises and strength training. It also includes social and psychological visits. Professional home helps can get too expensive when there is no travel economies. The higher the density, the closer clients live to one another, the lower the travel costs of the professional services and the time it takes to get from one person to another. Neighborhood-based coordination. Who can manage this complex and varied forms of assisted living while preserving client independence and dignity at the lowest possible price? The closer to the resident, both physically and personally, the higher the quality, dignity, and efficiency of the care. Neighborhood-based CDCs, community development corporations, are one model that can do this and one that planners know well. Who are the senior care CDCs? They can be churches, synagogues and mosques, labor unions, fraternal organizations, and other nonprofit community-based providers. They are often the only ones willing and capable of organizing comprehensive care oversight in very low-income neighborhoods. There are already a wide variety of senior assistance CDCs. Here is a representative list of these various models: the Neighborhood Warden program, age-integrated co-housing, shared housing or share a home, eco-housing, and single-agency comprehensive care management and consortium management of Section 202 and tax credit-built housing with assisted living. Lots of examples out there, but this does not add up to widespread coverage in local U.S. communities. Most of these examples were invented in other countries, and there are only a small scattering of examples in the U.S. There's only time for one example. For complete coverage, I suggest you go to any of the 3 books listed here. The Warden concept is a new form of community-based care professional and coordinator. Now, that title may give you the jitters, but it was developed and widely available in Great Britain, where the term warder refers to a chief prison administrator. A warden in British English refers to a wide variety of care coordinators who serve as family surrogates. For example, the college dorm warden serves as a parent surrogate to entering freshmen. The warden in neighborhood resident seniors. A neighborhood warden to seniors has training in 2 years of community college programs in social work, psychology, nursing, and building management. They are mostly women who coordinate with the families of the senior and community-based services and act as an advocate and daughter surrogate to seniors who are aging in place in their own home or apartment. The warden lives in the same neighborhood as the 20 to 40 seniors they are assigned to, depending on how independent or dependent their mix is. She makes daily visits to some, weekly visits to all, provides some direct help, but primarily monitors health changes and calls in and coordinates family and community-based aid as needed. Wardens have proven to be very cost-effective by keeping visiting family and community services to a minimum, making sure there is neither over or under caring, while maintaining maximum privacy and dignity for their charges. In this way, they keep the senior active and independent to the margin of their physical and emotional ability. The role of urban planner as keeper of comprehensive plan is way I want to end this. Modern day urban and regional planning has tended to divide into 2 departments. The department that authors and oversees the implementation of the comprehensive plan is one type. 2 examples of this office's responsibilities when it comes to the elderly are, of course, zoning, seeing to it that it's flexible enough to accommodate the wide variety of housing with assisted and co-living needed to age in place in conventional housing, and avoid moving to assisted and institutional living as much as is desired and possible despite various frailties and disabilities. A density of urban life is achieved that allows all of the activity of daily living that can occur to occur within each neighborhood. Holistic neighborhoods are a very big key to dealing with the aging society. Within easy walking and biking and frequent light rail, mobile seniors should be able to get to shopping, visiting friends, dining out, getting hair care, attending religious services, enjoying parks and recreation. All of these kinds of things should be within easy, barrier-free access. Urban planning in the role of neighborhood service coordinator is also important. Neighborhood service offices make up the other planners. They assess and improve the quality of neighborhood life. this department could be the pivotal unit to coordinate the city's senior service programs. Developing management models like the Neighborhood Warden service to monitor individual support service and coordinating health, social welfare, and physical housing upkeep and retrofitting to form a seamless support package for aging seniors. It can be argued that the physical aspects of the support plan is at the core. Affordable, barrier-free, easy maintenance living environments are the first step and even make it possible to postpone or minimize the need for health and social service intervention. And that's the end of my speech. For additional information, here again are those 3 books that I think speak to this subject the best.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Len. We have a number of questions that have been coming in. So what I'm going to do is unmute all of our speakers. I'll just ask you to try to be quiet, and then we will have the opportunity for more dialogue. Now, one of the things that was asked up front, and Len, this question is for you, is to explain what eco-housing is, or eco-housing that you mentioned.
Okay. It's of the ones I list there, it's kind of the rarest, but in some ways the most interesting because it's run headlong into zoning or ordinances that don't fit with it. It's a way for families to bring grandma closer to them. The city actually owns a number of houses that are portable. They're not mobile homes because these have to be made barrier-free, but they can be put in the backyard with some foundation work and path work done to get in and out of it. This has been a real benefit, but it has been difficult to maintain and monitor this because once they've got the house, many families don't want to ever give it this echo house in the backyard, ever give it up. They just as soon their teenager go and practice their guitar in that house after grandma dies or whatever. But it tends to become an extension of the family.
Great, thanks for that explanation. So while Brian has just added a comment, and I'll share this with the audience. So his mother, who's 85, receives home health care services from the Veterans Administration Home Care Program. And he mentioned that his mother was qualified for this because his dad was a deceased veteran. And so he just wanted to share that for other families that have veterans, that the Veterans Administration Home Care Program is something that can be accessible and helpful to folks.
I agree. It's a good, if you're eligible, it's worth tapping into.
So I'll ask this question for the audience. As a planner, we obviously have a lot of stuff that's on our plate. If you were to advise a planner, what are the 3 things that you think would be most important for a planning agency to be looking at and considering now?
The city of Champaign, where I'm on the Planning Commission, just updated its comprehensive plan, and so much of what's on the agenda for the next 5 years it fits in perfectly with an aging senior population. We're trying to green our plans. We're trying to lessen our carbon footprint, and we want to continue to have growth at the local level, but we're talking much more about growth being infill and retrofitting and not continued sprawl out into the community. And 2 of the things I mentioned were that if we're really going to be able to service the seniors and give them as much independence as possible, we need higher density holistic neighborhoods that allow them to get within easy walking or biking or other means of transportation in and around their neighborhood and take care of themselves to the limits of their abilities. And these are the kinds of things that I think go well together with the whole lowering the carbon footprint of our cities and probably where we should coordinate our thinking.
This is Jacques. I certainly agree with Len on all those things. I have been doing a lot of work in what have been called shrinking cities, and I think that even in situations where cities have lost half or more of their population, that the idea of creating compact neighborhoods and neighborhoods that can function for the support of all are really important. I think that the second thing would be issues that all the issues that surround the idea of energy and alternative energy. I think that the next 20, 30 years it's going to be one of the biggest things we're going to have to deal with. And finally, I don't think urban America is going to ever really thrive without solving the education problem. Now, is that a planner's issue? I don't know, but it certainly is an essential ingredient to making our city and our society successful in a global context.
Yeah, we have a good local example of that. Most places have a separate board of education, so that it's hard for the planner to be dictating where they put new schools. Champaign wants to move one of its 2 high schools to the absolute edge of the city, which goes totally against what we want to put in, what we have put in our comprehensive plan. What I see is happening, though, is I see that boards of education and the planning department are working a lot more closely than they have in the past. And I think everybody understands that we have to coordinate with all these things. Now, we're in a state here in Illinois where there are more separate taxing districts than any other city. I think double the closest, which is Pennsylvania. But these things all have to be coordinated. Park and recreation, everything, and they all affect the quality of life for seniors by where they're put and how they're designed and so on. So this all has to be coordinated, and I think it's our responsibility, the planners, to get everybody else on board, including the health and social welfare folks. Good luck.
All right. You all have talked about aging in place and that there's a strong desire for people who want to age in place and want to be cared for in their home. How do we balance that over the long term with the tons of people that we're going to have that are going to be aging? Is it really efficient to operate our cities with all of these people being dispatched to care in individual homes? And, you know, is there an alternative that we should be looking at?
Okay, I'll take this first. One of the other groups I mentioned was Share a Home, and there are a lot of lonely seniors in 4-bedroom houses whose children are gone from the community. Corporate America has moved them some other place. Their spouse has died, and it's much too much house for them to take care of, let alone pay the property taxes and everything else. This is one area is matchmaking people and then monitoring their living together. Again, we're going to have zoning laws that allow that kind of living to occur. Not all cities and municipalities allow that non-related persons living that way. But that's one solution to it.
Well, I think I read an article about that shared housing that happened to be a fairly large building in New York that where it was highly successful, and the social interaction among the 15 or 20 people that were involved was really quite magnificent. I think the question, if you start to think about it mathematically, you say, well, we have one person for 2,200 square feet of house is not very efficient. That's true, and I think that if we begin to build more desirable neighborhoods, compact areas, if they may be neighborhoods or city centers or districts, whatever we want to call them, that people will gravitate towards areas that give them the most advantages. As a personal example, my wife and I moved from a 2,500 square foot house to a 1,500 square foot apartment, and we like it much better because there's less to take care of and we don't need that space. And we're in a neighborhood that provides us with the kind of services and benefits that we're really looking for.
That's I think the key. The other thing is, elderly don't want to give up their house because that means usually giving up their neighborhood as well, and their church and
right.
their social group. If we have these holistic neighborhoods, and they can give up their house so a younger family can live in, but still stay in the neighborhood, a small apartment building, or some kind of small townhouses that fit in with the design of the other houses, could be infilled in, and they would be more readily willing to move because they're really staying in their cultural and social environment. Another one is to look into co-housing, and this is often done at the lead of younger people who want to share housing with a diverse group of people, and they often bring in a senior member, and between them they trade their various skills. The elderly person can help with babysitting and can show people a lot of sewing and knitting skills, and you have people who can do some of the heavy lifting in their apartment and do some of the heavy shopping for them, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. So there are a whole slew of kind of infill things that we can do. They're not just physical infill, they are social and cultural as well.
I think some of the demographic trends are going to open up a lot of these kinds of options that we now think of, well, gee, those are weird, that's not the way we've always done things. But if you look at the percentage of people who are married in the American population, it's below 50%, that the size of families and households quickly approaching 2 or less in a lot of particularly urban areas, that we're going to find ourselves searching for different ways to arrange our living situations very quickly.
Yeah. One of this is to go back to the multi-generation house as well, though, where maybe the kids want to move into back into the large house with their children, with the grandchildren, and mom staying after dad has died. And the Walton's idea is one that can work as well. It's good, if we just use our imaginations and look at what we prize as quality of life, we're going to come up with a lot of different kinds of housing solutions and neighborhood solutions.
Great. Yes, we have lots of other questions. So,
okay.
How do you see the dawning of the digital age affecting the lives of seniors in our future? And that's a question from Todd. And I'll just note for Todd that we do have a couple of upcoming sessions as part of the aging series that will be touching on issues of technology specifically, but I'll let our speakers go ahead and address that.
Did you also say visual age or just technology?
Digital age. Digital age.
Digital.
I didn't hear that either.
Yeah, I didn't.
We're a fine pair.
Well, yeah, don't forget, both of us are already in that age group. But, being an academic, I started working on computers when it took a whole building to do something a computer that can fit on your fingernail could do today. There are a lot of elderly who are scared to death. I have a stepmother who for years I've tried to say, can I give you this old computer so that we can email each other? Otherwise, I always have to call you. But she says, I'd rather hear your voice. And there are people who are not in the digital age, and they don't want to be. They're afraid to death of it. And a lot of the things that we have done to bring into the home require too many skills for them to change temperatures, to change different lighting. It gets very complicated for them and very confusing, and they end up maybe hurting themselves. But if and I'll say this, if the not digital age, but the technical age can be brought in without them having to do a lot of work, it's amazing what you can keep in what disabilities you can't live alone with. They now have toilets that a person, as they sit on it in the morning, it can take a urine count specimen. It can check your heartbeat. And it can send these things to a transfer station miles away, and if they see some problems, they can get somebody out to the house real quickly. And they don't, the individual elderly person doesn't have to do a thing. So there are ways that high tech can move in and make a big difference here. But if they have to run it, if the seniors have to literally know how to use it, including the way we're linked together here today. And it's taken a lot of work among our 3 different locations, but it works, and we're patient with it. It's just too alien.
Well, I think that, since planners are future-oriented, those of us who have had to learn how to use computers and all other kinds of magnificent pieces of equipment to make our living, and those who are right behind us, the baby boomers, who already will bring to their senior years a knowledge about how to use this stuff, will be in a better position to make use of it, and to stay in communication and to be more cooperative with whatever kind of monitoring devices might develop over time. So I think that on balance, I would say that it's going to have a benefit towards the notion of giving people more choices about how they want to live.
Okay, we have a question here. It seems that there are pockets of senior living in states like New Jersey, which is where this person is from, and Florida. I don't know of any cities that deliberately integrate living styles to mingle the younger population and the older population. It seems to me that bringing the older people in, and this person's 64, would bring down a younger influx. Has that not been your experience, or is that not a consideration?
There's both an American answer to this and a European answer to this. We have built isolated elderly towns, new towns, and they're gated, and very little goes on between them and the outside world. And even among them, Sun City and some of these other places out in Arizona, I'll pick a different state, have actually, forced people out if their functional, if their dependencies get too heavy. And these are kind of artificial in many, many ways. There are some very good retirement communities, though, and a lot of them are not in the United States. There's a Swedish example I know that's highly integrated with this community. In fact, they built the little retirement community next to a new campus, a college campus, and they have lots of activities that go on between the students and the seniors. And I think that does make much more sense. And I'll leave it at that.
I'll just tell a story that came up earlier this month, that a proposal to develop a 25-acre area of fairly well devastated land on the southeast side of Chicago was put forward, where no one under 40 could live in it. It was age restricted to under 40. That's not just a householder. That was nobody under 40 could live in it. And you know, the idea that somebody thought that there would be a market for that type of housing, you know, in a fairly unsafe, actually pretty unsafe neighborhood was, you know, a startling thing to me. I personally kind of recoil against that type of thing. That I think that, you know, separating us as a community by ages is something that does tend to isolate people, both particularly the elderly.
I think we have great role models in Japan and Western Europe to look to as we continue to age. It's a whole different environment, and integrating the age groups is a natural thing now in these environments. In many elementary schools, they have adopted all the seniors in their surrounding neighborhood, and they visit them on a regular basis. The kids do. I think you have to be in 3rd grade or older, help with a little bit of cleaning in the house and planting some plants or just visiting, singing to them or showing their artwork to them, bringing them into the school for Christmas plays or whatever it might happen to be, and even putting up posters, you know, have you kissed your grandma lately, or things like that. We'll get there, and as an open society, we'll do it creatively ultimately. But we have made mistakes already, and one of the worst ones is segregating age groups.
Okay, next question. Granny flats get converted to rental units when Granny dies. How should planners deal with this? Should we care? What are your thoughts? I know in public meetings, for example, that I've gone to, everyone supports the idea of keeping the disabled child or the senior citizen in the granny flat, but they're very concerned about a turnover in their neighborhood moving from primarily single family to a rental community. So what are some of the issues we might deal with that?
Well, granny flats are the rental version of eco housing, and both programs have this problem. Once a grandmother and her family, younger family, move in together, and she has her own flat or her own eco house, so she can have that privacy, have her own friends in, but still be close to the family and have meals with them and do projects with them and so on. It gets very hard for the family to let go of that extra space once grandma dies, and that's the big fault in both programs. I don't know what you do about it. I guess you have to police it more, because the rights of other people are being, you know, ignored. And actually, this program isn't all that inexpensive, and so it should go back to the city or whoever's managing it once grandma dies. But I don't know how you do it.
I don't think it's so bad to keep it. Because, again, if you look at demographic trends that we have, a lot of people coming behind us who are going to be single-person households who are not going to be able to afford the kind of standard housing we have. I mean, I lived in Evanston, Illinois for a very long time, and those of you that know Evanston know that it's filled with big turn-of-the-century, the last century housing, and it has a small institution in it called Northwestern University. But I can't tell you how many of those big housing had on their 3rd floors 1- and 2-room little living units that were rented by students at Northwestern. I mean, one house after another after another after another had, and you know, none of them were legal, but there was a market demand for every one of those. And there's an issue where zoning is often responsive to the most conservative thinking rather than to kind of the reality of market demand. And the question is, well, we can't let our neighborhood go to hell. But I don't think that's necessarily the case in all things. I think that that we need to look at different kinds of solutions for housing, not only for the elderly, but for single people, disabled people, people that are not in our standard four-person family that essentially doesn't exist anymore.
And you brought a for-profit landlord into the model here, and that can be the element that solves everything. The landlord is not going to leave the small apartment empty, and he's going to know pretty much when grandma has died, and we'll start looking for either another grandma or looking for student housing or whatever he can rent it as. So maybe this all belongs in the private sector, and it can then control itself, and not in the public sector.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we are now out of time. I appreciate you all joining us today. I learned some new things, and I hope the rest of our audience did as well. Jacques and Lynn and Libby, thank you very much for sharing the information that you have. As you log out today, you will receive a survey. We just ask that you fill this out. I will provide this feedback to our speakers, and so I'll be following up by email with our speakers. A copy of today's presentation will be available at the Utah APA website, so if you want to visit later this afternoon, we'll have a copy of today's presentation that will be up and available. Thank you all again, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Okay, Libby, Lynn, and Jacques, I will just follow up by email with you later today. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lynn. Are you there?
I think he's off now.
Everybody's
Yeah.
Disconnected, huh?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll follow up with them personally.
Okay,
Thanks for
thank you.
your help on everything, and thank Corey for me as well.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.